Alright, we're prepping the trunk to put in the roll bar, and we're going to bring some cross supports down and back here and tie it in so that if and when we do roll this piece of crap, we don't, you know, die and stuff. So anyway, what I'm going to go ahead and do is, and you're all going to cry about it, I'm going to go ahead and take the die grinder, cut down along here, and pretty much everything from this point back, the plastic, it'll be entirely gone. So you see we're already pulling out all of our insulation. It'll catch us on fire. So yeah, when we check back, that's going to be completely gone. Alright, there we go. She's all cut off so that we can get to our panels. So we see here we got this nice big square piece on either side. I could kind of feel that under that all that plastic. So we're going to go ahead and mount our roll bar plate here and then tie it up into, I guess, our main roll bar piece when we get that mounted. I guess cutting the back end of this thing up had its rewards. I actually found this vacuum gauge, and it had fallen down in this crevice. So totally worth cutting the back end up, in my opinion, for that. Gauge looks a little janky, but we'll plumb it up and see if she works later on. Drilling our roll bar mounting plate here. Getting our sandwich plates drilled on here for our roll bar. So getting the passenger one done. We already got a piece on our driver's side there. Just something to bolt to if the floor can hold together. So alright, kind of got the main hoop of the roll bar in here. You can see some little mounting plate we made out of just some scrap metal here, so should be good and strong.
Okay, this is going to be our support for the gusset back here to the rear wheel well. We're going to use the existing contour here that's already flattened out, which is very handy to use. And this is what we've been using to butt up against for our welds. But we're going to make a 3.5 inch wide plate as opposed to the 2, so we'll have a couple bolts on this side and a couple on this side. And we'll transfer and locate them, and then we'll angle that and butt weld that onto that. So that'll be our fab project, a right and a left side.
Should be good, and we retain our functionality of our seats here, or they can still come up and go down. So right now we got the parking brake handle out here, and we're going to try and rig something up with the stuff we got around the garage. But this is for all you whiners and crybabies. I really didn't care for this center console, and I'm going to use this plate to put a drink holder or two on it. So I'm just cutting right along this line, if you can see. So in a second, all of this piece of the center console will be completely gone. Okay, so you have to have a functional parking brake to pass tech, which they've never checked before, but this being nationals, I figure they might. So this is kind of, if you wonder why I cut out the center console and whatnot, it's because all the linkage to the original parking brake had been removed, and I wasn't about to try and go to salvage yards here and there and spend time pulling the rusty old stuff off. And the old parking brake stuff is long since rotted away. You can see the nipple of it poking through there on the floor. But anyway, what was there was all garbage, so I bought a new parking brake cable, which I'll show you in a second over on the other side. But what I kind of did is I took a piece of all thread here, ground down the side so it would go through that little round piece, but then it wouldn't turn. And then I just got some pipe stuff on here as spacers, and then this is actually my adjustment. So it's kind of nice having this wide open here. I can kind of adjust this on the fly. And with this wide open, maybe I can make some actual drink holders back here. So now we can see that when I pull the handbrake up here, the pads grab. Obviously you're going to have a little movement here where the pads are rotating around that top axis point, but you cannot pull this drum off. So it's holding good, and like I said, we're gonna pass tech. Good stuff. All right, so when I was under here working the parking brake stuff over and drilling the holes for the roll bar, I noticed the fuel line looks pretty suspect of failure, and going through RallyCross, you're throwing up a good amount of rocks, but you can kind of see some pretty nasty spots where you know that there's no way that there's a lot of material left there, and having a line break, especially because it actually goes through and crosses over the exhaust here, could potentially be pretty catastrophic, and we could burn the whole thing down. So that being said, I got this roll of 5/16 line here, and we're just gonna double barb right into our tank line and run it away from our exhaust for one, and get it up to where we got some good line, and we'll flare it out and be hard lined again. But cheap, simple solution. I think this cost me under $1 a foot, so seemed like the right choice to me. So let's get slapped on there. Well, I made the cut, so I guess I'm committed now, and I'm covered in gasoline. All right, finally got all the fittings here to make the fuel line work. We see our 5/16 line to 5/16. That was pretty easy, but obviously look at this crazy stuff to go from quarter to 5/16 for the return line, and then again to go to the quarter to 5/16 hose, and then there's our 5/16 little double barb. So O'Reilly's always comes through for me. It's always amazing what they can come up with, and should be able to get the fuel line all hooked up with this stuff. I'm gonna make you cry again. Here we go. Mounting up the vacuum gauge, and the oil pressure gauge was just kind of up here flapping in the breeze. So couple angled mounts here look good to me. We're just gonna stick these guys right in the dash and screw them in. Taking a look here at the new meats that are gonna go on the car. These came off my F100 that I took off about 3-4 years ago. They were on the truck since I got it out of a farm field. So they're a little hard and not quite dry rotted yet, but they have a lot more tread than the original ones do. So I figured I'd pick up the 351. I was using it to kind of cradle an engine out at the tree farm. So going on for duty again, I guess. Should be pretty good tucked under that fender. That one just rolled right over. All right, so we're having to make some provisions to get those big tires under here. The first thing I'm doing is I'm adding some of these little spring risers, and I definitely wouldn't recommend doing this if you care about your vehicle. It pretty much destroys springs, but again, obviously we don't care. You've seen what we've been doing thus far. I also took out the little spring dampener because I didn't want it to come up and knock our little shims out. So anyway, should be about good to go. They should fit under here just fine now. Trying to get some new shocks on this car. I had a big stash up in my attic from when I worked for an automotive dealership, and when they took their new vehicles off the line and put lift kits on them for display, they would just throw away all the old hardware. So I got a bunch of shocks and whatnot laying upstairs in my attic. So these come off a Dodge 1500 in particular, so I think they'll go on here and again help us to further stiffen this rear end up. But you see here we ground the end of the bolt off so we don't have to go through any threads. Just put a wrench on it and smack it as hard as we can, and we'll go through with a punch and knock that bolt out, and we should be able to get these on here. With the old junk. Trying to get these heavy duty truck shocks up in here. So being a little creative and trying to get her into the slot, and we can get it close, get a line-up pin through her. There it is, get that pin through it. There we go, perfect. Now we can get the bolt through, and everything works like it should. Awesome. You can see our nice new hardware we're putting back on there. Alright, so I forgot to mention we had the roll bar completely in here now, made our little plates, tacked it, took it back out, welded it up, and anyway, this is the final product of the roll bar. It's pretty darn stiff, doesn't inhibit any of the functionality of the rear seats because obviously those are still important, I guess. Another thing, looking down in here, made these little plates out of, you see all of our scrap metal over there we've been tripping on. We machined up our plates here, and if the tire would happen to go up in the fender with this design, you know, no studs sticking down, it shouldn't tear the tires up too much. But anyway, at this point, we're ready to get the tires back on here. Got all the springs and all this stuff hooked in, right? These 1500 Dodge Ram shocks in here. So hopefully, and we rolled the fender, hopefully it fits. You know, this is pushing it pretty close. All right, so doing some jet work here on the engine before we go ahead and run it. So we don't want to lean out and grenade the thing all over the track. So first thing we're going through here is the power valve, and it idles with about 12 inches of vacuum or so. So if you cut that in half by per Holley recommendation, you get the 6.5 power valve or so. So we got that in there. Some other stuff here, we'll go through the primary jetting. So it comes stock with a 66 jet, and we're up about 1,000 feet, and for every 800 feet of altitude below sea level, you want to pull jet. These carburetors are jetted from the factory at about 70 degrees, and at sea level, so that's what they're designed around. So anyway, we're about 1,000 feet here in Iowa where we are, so we're going to go ahead and pull a jet for that. We're going to add a jet for size for temp, and that's because it's jet again at 70 degrees. It'll be about 50, 60 degrees when we're running, so we're just going to be on the safe side. We'll add a jet there. Now this intake manifold is a big Victor Jr. open plenum air gap intake, so the air gapper alone we're going to add a jet. The open plenum we're going to add a jet, and just being a high rise, you know, it has those longer runner lengths, worse vacuum signal. So again, we're going to throw another jet at her, and we're going to be at about a 69 primary jet, and we do this for the secondaries as well. So I got the 69s in there. We've swapped our secondary jets as well, and we can slap it back on. We're getting pretty close to firing this thing up and lowering it off the jack stands. All right, it's time to check for fuel leaks and light her off. We primed the carburetor up, so hopefully here, and it's still tuned from my little 289 engine, so should be pretty close. Like you saw, we rejetted her. Parking brake actually works. Amazing. Still forgot to disable that clutch deal. Come on, tack. There we go. Oil pressure coming up. Got that nice 2050 in her. All right. It's about as close as I come to body work. Should be good.